Greetings. I'm Brother Judah, a representative of the NMP, the Nazarene Messianic Party. I'd like to welcome everyone who have taken their time out to join us in today's discussion. I'd like to welcome you to the NMP Vanguard League YouTube channel. For the sake of helping us grow the channel, we ask that you like and subscribe to the channel for more content. We also have websites that you can contact us and learn more about what we teach, or even free literature and our classes. We approach the Bible from a socio-political perspective. So therefore, we incorporate the Bible with social sciences. And today, we want to look at a situation that began to take place in America and throughout the world during the time of the shutdowns, starting back from 2019 to 2020. We were looking at the COVID pandemic. And the solution for this COVID pandemic was a COVID vaccine. And today, I would like to review a few things because time has passed and it appears certain things were forgotten. And so today, I would like to look and investigate whether the pharmaceutical companies will be transparent and follow the mandate in which President Donald Trump has put forward. Trump wants the truth concerning the COVID-19 vaccines. And we're going to look into this and investigate this a little bit because it goes deeper than just protecting the public. In fact, you can argue it wasn't about protecting the public at all. Bear with us a little bit as we get started. Again, I'm Brother Judah for today's discussion. And just give me a moment, please. All right. So we want to look at some things today. I know here on this channel, I want to begin to get right to the point, and I don't really want things to be drawn out too much. But today, I do want to do some investigating. And we're looking at Donald Trump. And outside of the mainstream media or the rhetoric of Donald Trump being a tyrannical dictator or a racist and all of this other stuff, I mean, if you present the facts, hopefully that I am willing to consider them and accept the facts. But rhetoric, it has its place, oftentimes in the garbage. And so outside of all of the rhetoric, we have seen the things that Donald Trump have done, and whether the so-called African-American community, which I willing to wager you have a significant amount of them now, who's taken into consideration the political activities of Donald Trump when it comes down to the African-American citizen. Everyone have the tendency to look at their pocketbooks. But if you look at from his efforts to clean up the neighborhoods where you have people who are working class people who are trying to raise families, his efforts into addressing the criminal activity, his effort in addressing the diversity, inclusion doctrines which exclude, and people can argue about it if they want to, but many of us who have taken the time to consider it, the diversity, equity and inclusion, it has left the so-called African American people behind. And you have these liberals, white and black liberals, who have the tendency to not tell the entire truth. But you find that among the Republicans as well. Don't get me wrong. But I remember our campaigns arguing against the forced injection, the threatening of people losing their jobs, not allowing the youth to go to school, and you have compulsory education. So if they don't go to school, parents could be brought up on charges. They really put the people in a bind to force them to receive an experimental injection. And during that time, the media controlled by the Democratic Party, they did their fair share in removing and eliminating any voices contrary to the pharmaceutical industry. In fact, during the debate, the presidential debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, Joe Biden testified himself that if the pharmaceutical companies and their scientists demanded that he shut the entire country down, he would do it. But we know he didn't mean the entire country. He only meant a certain sector of the country. The big capitalists, they made billions. Those are the discussions. So let's look at it again. Let's go back a bit into history because of what President Donald Trump is bringing to the table. Let's analyze this a bit and let's consider what's being said here.
U.S. President Donald Trump is demanding full transparency from drug companies over the effectiveness of their COVID-19 drugs. Trump called on Pfizer, Moderna, and other pharmaceutical companies to release data immediately, saying the public deserves to see the evidence. He said companies have shown him extraordinary results, but questioned why the same information is not shared with the public. On Truth Social, Trump wrote that it's important to justify success, as some believe vaccines saved millions, while others doubt. Trump pointed directly to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., saying the CDC and his opponents are tearing themselves apart without clear data. The president urged drug companies to clear up the debate now, saying the CDC is being ripped apart over the issue. Trump also cast doubt on Operation Warp Speed, his own fast-track vaccine program launched in 2020 during the pandemic.
Now, I remember, because we followed this and we were doing street work, and I remember Donald Trump Warp Speed and how he was convinced and probably still haven't been fully persuaded that the vaccines were, or the injections were simply dangerous. So he's asking for clarity. If he made a mistake or not, he's asking for clarity. He was under the impression that the injections were safe, effective, and that they were able to protect the U.S. population from the infection of COVID-19. Mr. Trump did go through Warp Speed. He wanted to fast track the injections, but nevertheless, I recall that he also argued that there were other methods to deal with the situation. They badgered him all the way. You know, when he tried to shut the country down at first, when they first got wind that there could be an infection coming from China, they called him a racist and And therefore you had Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer dancing in the streets in Chinatown. You know, they acting a damn fool, but they putting on a show. They always put on a show. All the way to the point where Donald Trump, well, he said, take some bleach. Please, we're talking about adults here. And those of us who are familiar with Donald Trump, I don't know how old everyone is listening, but I remember Donald Trump growing up, running around with all of the athletes and the fighters, Mike Tyson, Larry Holmes, Herschel Walkers. It was Donald Trump who actually funded Jesse Jackson's campaign for running for president. So all of this bogus nonsense that he is a racist is, again, it proves how dangerous propaganda is and how it can dictate public opinion. But nevertheless, he argued that there were other alternatives. And when Donald Trump argued that there were other alternatives other than the injection, this itself would not allow mandated injections as long as that there were other alternatives. But the media tried to mock him and shut him down because they had an agenda. They had an agenda that need to be questioned. And we're going to investigate some suspicious motives that could be behind these injections and the targeted population for these injections. And the target population for these injections, I don't know if people were paying attention or not, but they were the minority groups and also baby boomers. We're going to investigate this a bit. You know, the baby boomers, since I was growing up, I have heard how much of a strain the baby boomers will be on the economy in the future. And so, well, if they're a strain, would you try to eliminate them? Not all of them, you know, we're not talking conspiracy, you know, or as some people say, some conspiracies are true. Some people say that, but no, we want to look at the data to see if it's true. We want to see if there's empirical evidence to prove or to shed light on the intentions that were ill-willed toward the American public. So yes, Donald Trump said fast track it. I'm sure a lot of people would be saying, well, he said fast track it. Yeah, he did. But he also said that there were alternatives, thus giving a person a way to opt out if he did not want to be forced to take the injection. And since Donald Trump held that sentiment, he was a problem to the pharmaceutical industries. And so they did all they could to push him out of office. And they pushed him out of office, and they put Biden and Kamala Harris in, which were nothing but a bunch of bride puppets. And they turned over the American population and let the rich man run roughshod all over the entire country. See, people like to look at just Anthony Fauci. He wasn't in it by himself. He may be the fall guy, but he wasn't in this by himself. So Donald Trump wants answers. He wants answers, right? So let's look at this.
Same information is not shared with the public.
And might I add, we want answers too. We want answers as well. All of a sudden now, 5-6 years later, now the truth is coming out. Many of us have heard this years ago, but it's just now making it public.
U.S. President Donald Trump is demanding full transparency from drug companies over the effectiveness of their COVID-19 drugs. Trump called on Pfizer, Moderna, and other pharmaceutical companies to release data immediately, saying the public deserves to see the evidence. He said companies have shown him extraordinary results, but questioned why the same information is not shared with the public. On Truth Social, Trump wrote that it's important to justify success, as some believe vaccines saved millions, while others doubt. Trump pointed directly to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., saying the CDC and his opponents are tearing themselves apart without clear data. The president urged drug companies to clear up the debate now, saying the CDC is being ripped apart over the issue. Trump also cast doubt on Operation Warp Speed, his own fast-track vaccine program launched in 2020 during the pandemic. He said its reputation must be verified, asking if it was truly as brilliant as many say, or whether mistakes were made.
We all want to know. It is very important that the drug companies justify the success of their corona or justify the success of their various COVID drugs. Many people think they are a miracle that saved millions of lives. Others disagree. So that's fair. Mr. Trump is asking for verification. Were they mistaken? And to clear the air for some who saying that the COVID injections were dangerous, other ones saying that they were a miracle that helped people. He's asking that the pharmaceutical companies come be transparent and make it clear to end the debate. That's what he's asking for. He isn't shutting anyone down. He isn't saying that the people who are saying that the COVID injection was dangerous, shut them down, take down their channels. If they're a doctor, threaten to take away their licenses. He's not doing that. But that's what the Biden administration did. That's what the Democrats did. That's what Clintons want. They want to take away the freedom of speech of anyone that goes against their narrative. That's what Kerry wants. That is what Harris wants and Biden. The Democrats and also some Republicans. When I'm saying Democrat, don't think I'm excluding Republicans because you have some there. All right. But you have some Democrats who didn't go for it. But right now I'm talking about the leaders of this party. So Trump want to know, what is it? Tell us what this is. Tell us if these injections that was given to the American public, that they were okay and that it was truly misinformation from people saying that they were hazardous or harmful. That is fair. Let's look at this.
The comments come days after Trump fired CDC Director Susan Monarez following clashes with RFK Jr. over vaccine policy. Kennedy, a vaccine skeptic, is now shaping CDC leadership. 3 senior officials resigned in protest over his direction. The FDA has meanwhile narrowed vaccine recommendations, limiting the latest shots to seniors and high-risk individuals.
Hi, it's Robert F. Kennedy Jr. here, your HHS secretary. At HHS, we have a division called the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, or BARDA. BARDA drives some of our most advanced scientific research. It funds developments of vaccines, drugs, diagnostics, and other tools to fight emerging diseases and national health threats. Over the past few weeks, BARDA reviewed 22 mRNA vaccine development investments and began canceling them. Let me explain why. Most of these shots are for flu or COVID, but as the pandemic showed us, mRNA vaccines don't perform well against viruses that infect the upper respiratory tract. Here's the problem. mRNA only codes for a small part of the viral proteins, usually a single antigen. One mutation and the vaccine becomes ineffective. This dynamic drives a phenomenon called antigenic shift, meaning that the vaccine paradoxically encourages new mutations and can actually prolong pandemics as the virus constantly mutates to escape the protective effects of the vaccine. Millions of people, maybe even you or someone you know, caught the Omicron variant despite being vaccinated. That's because a single mutation can make mRNA vaccines ineffective. The same risk applies to flu.
I've presented at the FDA advisory meetings. I've advised companies for decades on this, so I know the regulatory science very well.
So here we're looking at a debate. This, as we say all the time, this is where the real battleground takes place, right? Even though, I mean, you have the masses of people sitting on the sidelines, but those of us who are becoming awakened, we realize in the political world, this is where the real war happens. And so this is May 21st, 2025. This is before the Congress, and they're arguing over the vaccine efficiency and safety. And so this is what we have going on here. As Robert Kennedy pointed out, the vaccine is fundamentally flawed when it's dealing with COVID variants because it mutates. Okay, so now we're going to follow up with this. We got to follow up with this because it's important, very important. So we're looking at the Senator Johnson, the chair. Let's look at this battle.
Presented at the FDA advisory meetings. I've advised companies for decades on this, so I know the regulatory science very well. When a product definitely results in death, and there are thousands of peer-reviewed papers on this, Governor, the COVID vaccines in some people, sadly, result in death. Some on the very first day they take the shot. That must be a black box warning on the product immediately. I just checked the package inserts for the currently available products, the ones that Senator Blumenthal wants to pursue. Sounds like Governor wants to still pursue these. Our FDA still wants them to be administered. They still don't have the word death in the package insert. As of today, they don't. And so Americans are not fairly informed.
Do you have any doubt in your mind that the COVID injection caused some deaths? I mean, what do you think of the, 38,607 right now listed on VAERS? What do you think the real number is? And do you have any science to back up your opinion?
The best data are autopsies. So in the largest autopsy series published to date, I know because I'm the senior author, of all the deaths we examined, and we re-reviewed them. We had an adjudication committee. We had ways of arbitration deciding on did the vaccine cause death. The answer is, of these cases that came in for autopsy after vaccination, 73.9% of individuals, it was determined that the vaccine was the cause of death. First author is Holscher and colleagues, who's sitting right behind me.
And again, by FDA's own laws, that should be included on that package insert, correct?
Immediately in 2021, Dr. Carol Tossetta, working with the Daily Cloud, wrote Peter's Marks in the summer of 2023 and said, where's the black box warning? Where is it? No word from Mark.
So this is what we have here. You have done, the scientists and the people or the scientists who work for the pharmaceutical companies, they knew that the COVID injection can cause death in some people. And there was no warning. You know how you go into the drugstore? Where's the warning? You look at some aspirin, it tells you the warning. I myself went into a pharmaceutical area or to the pharmacist area, and I asked them for the material safety data sheets. They didn't know. They didn't even know how to obtain them. What is that? That is, let me know what is in this injection. Let me know what's in this product. And I ask, already being informed through the grace of the good Lord, that it's not likely they're going to have them because people don't even know what's in them. Number one. So number two, what's ever in it, it has devastating effects, even causing death in human beings. And so as this panel is discussing, there was no warning. Nothing. But what was done is that everything was shut down. That's what happened. The media shut everything down. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. We're going to go back to this. Right? And I want to show you something. So we're not making this stuff up. We're not making this up. Sometimes people may forget. They may forget, right, what we have already experienced. People want to sit up here and talk about Donald Trump. What about the possible death sentence that the past administration handed over to so many people? And if it wasn't a death sentence, the injury, life-altering injuries that affected thousands of people for the sake of what? Profit. Here in the panel in 2025 before Congress, now they're arguing that there was no warning that it causes death when they were fully aware that it does. And this is one of the reasons why. See, when we arguing the stifling of freedom of speech, we see it play out. You persuade as many as you can to believe your lie. And then whoever don't believe the lie, you label them as heretics or bringing forth a disinformation or misinformation, quacks. Well, you say that didn't happen. We have here January 17th, 2023. It started to be revealed. Big Pharma lobbied social media to flag COVID misinformation. Latest Twitter files revealed. That's why Zuckerberg wanted to come and try to save face. Because they're covering those who sat in power under the Democratic Party, who never cared for no one. They never did. They always played both sides of the fence, as I say over and over again, even during the days of slavery. COVID-19 vaccine manufacturers, here at the bottom. COVID-19 vaccine manufacturers, including Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna, lobbied Twitter and other social media platforms to set moderation rules that will flag purported COVID-19 related misinformation, quote unquote, according to the latest installment of the Twitter files. Now, this is back in 2023. This was the process that was happening to ban the freedom of speech, to stop others and doctors and nurses and people who were victims. They shut them down. They shut them down from explaining exactly what the panel's talking about now, the dangers of these injections. Big Pharma lobbied social media to shape content around vaccine policy. According to Fang, the pharmaceutical industry lobbied social media to shape content around vaccine policy. One example came via Biotechnology Innovation Organization, described by Fang as Pfizer and Moderna lobbying groups. Fang wrote that Bio fully funded a special content moderation campaign designed by a contractor called Public Good Projects, or PGP, which worked with Twitter to set content moderation rules around COVID misinformation. That's what we were dealing with. 2023. That's what we were dealing with. Okay, let's go back and look at this. Now, when we're looking at what, the panel is discussing here, no warnings. And on top of no warnings, we also have a active campaign by pharmaceutical companies to suppress the information. They had to suppress social media because they already had traditional media lockdown. They already had that lockdown. You weren't going to hear about it being dangerous on MSNBC. You won't hear about NBC. None of your news outlets, which is controlled by a single or a small group of Richmond. So you have all these independent journalists who's on social media. So therefore, they tried to shut them down, and they were effective.
Products, the ones that Senator Blumenthal wants to pursue. Sounds like governor wants to still pursue these. Our FDA still wants them to be administered. They still don't have the word death in the package insert. As of today, they don't. And so Americans are not fairly informed.
Do you have any doubt in your mind that the COVID injection caused some deaths? I mean, what do you think of the, 38,607 right now listed on VAERS? What do you think the real number is? And do you have any science to back up your opinion?
The best data are autopsies. So in the largest autopsy series published to date, I know because I'm the senior author, of all the deaths we examined, and we re-reviewed them. We had an adjudication committee. We had ways of arbitration deciding on did the vaccine cause death. The answer is, of these cases that came in for autopsy after vaccination, 73.9% of individuals, it was determined that the vaccine was the cause of death. First author is Holscher and colleagues. He's sitting right behind me.
And again, by FDA's own laws, that should be included on that package insert, correct?
Immediately in 2021, Dr. Carol Tassetta, working with the Daily Cloud, wrote Peter's Marks in the summer of 2023 and said, where's the black box warning? Where is it? No word from Marks.
Dr. Vaughn, you want to weigh in on the informed consent?
Well, the other thing is, I think emergency use authorization, actually by definition, when you fill out the documents for the patient, if they read it, it actually says that they should make sure that they are under no compulsion to get this product. And that is what's so confusing, because even though the product was mandated in the summer, at the end of the summer of 2021, the product on the shelves was still the EUA product. And in that sense, for somebody to be mandated to something that they also have to sign to say that they weren't mandated to do it is kind of hard to do legally.
By the way, that's the subject of a couple oversight letters in terms of the whole full authorization type of thing. Dr. Thorpe, quickly?
Yes, on informed consent, there was completely the opposite in pregnant women. HHS appears to have captured the American College of Obstetricians.
So now we're looking at when it came down to informed consent, which it was supposed to have been informed consent, but that's what the panel just argued, that it was confusing because people were being forced. And now what we have here is that it was total opposite for pregnant women. So they were forcing it on pregnant women. Now listen to this testimony.
Gynecologist, And my research team,
Full authorization type thing. Dr. Thorpe, quickly.
yes, on informed consent, there was completely the opposite in pregnant women. HHS appears to have captured the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and my research team, including Maggie Thorpe, JD, have proven that with the Freedom of Information Act.
For a few,
So
million, for a few $1 million, correct?
many $1 million. They captured ACOG. In December of 2020, everybody at ACOG and the other organizations, we're not going to push this vaccine in pregnant women. In the span of a pregnancy, 40 weeks, September 27th, 2021, you will push the vaccine. You will push it in pregnant women and follow all the HHS criteria. And if you don't, we will destroy you and your professional career will take your license away and we will decertify you. That went out to 60,000 OBGYN doctors. So
we probably should have expanded the title of this: corruption of science, federal health agencies. What would you call those? Professional organizations?
These are the three organizations that essentially govern obstetrical care, not just in the United States of America, but the whole world.
By the way, I wanted to ask you, to what extent are the medical journals funded by various conflicting organizations, pharmaceutical companies? I've heard Chinese interests. I mean, are you aware of that? You were talking about the article written by the editors of the New England Journal of Medicine.
Yes, I'm aware of the study by
That's right, the conflict of interest. How many of these journals have a conflict of interest? How many of these who are putting the pen to the pad and writing in these journals, how many of them are funded or have some type of connection to the big pharmaceutical companies? The senator asked, was it a few million? Here, given testimony, our witness argued it was many millions for the vaccine or for the injection. Let's get a testimony of this, the many millions of these so-called vaccines. Now watch this. Watch this carefully. In fact, let me just show you that I didn't add anything to his words. He said many millions.
one. You will push the vaccine. In December of
Do it is kind of hard to do legally.
By the way, that's the subject of a couple oversight letters in terms of the whole full authorization type thing. Dr. Thorpe, quickly.
Yes, on informed consent, there was completely the opposite in pregnant women. HHS appears to have captured the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and my research team, including Maggie Thorpe, JD, have proven that with the Freedom of Information Act.
For a few $1 million, correct?
Many $1 million. They captured
Many $1 million. Look at this. Many million.
And Mr. Gates, thank you so much for being with us. I'd like to talk to you about your approach to vaccinations.
We can't forget him. We can't forget Mr. Gates. Has he slithered out of the scene? Let's bring him back in. They want to talk about Fauci. It's a lot of people. Let's bring him back in. Listen carefully. Many millions, the panel argued.
And Mr. Gates, thank you so much for being with us. I'd like to talk to you about your approach to vaccinations. You wrote something recently, and like you always do, you kind of looked at the problem from a scientific and business perspective on things. You've invested $10 billion in vaccinations over the last 2 decades, and you figured out the return on investment for that, and it kind of stunned me. Can you walk us through the math?
Well, it's pretty impressive that
the return on investment. In other words, the profits being made off of your vaccines. What are the profits being made off your vaccines? He said it's astounding. Listen to the numbers. Many millions, going into the billions.
when you take these vaccines.
And Mr. Gates, thank you so much for being with us. I'd like to talk to you about your approach to vaccinations. You wrote something recently, and like you always do, you kind of looked at the problem from a scientific and business perspective on things. You've invested $10 billion in vaccinations over the last 2 decades, and you figured out the return on investment for that, and it kind of stunned me. Can you walk us through the math?
Well, it's pretty impressive that when you take these vaccines, get them to be very inexpensive by making big volume commitments, have that right relationship with the private sector, get the delivery system so they're really getting the coverage out there, you literally save millions of lives. And 20 years ago, when we created these new multilateral organizations, Gavi for the vaccines, Global Fund for HIV, TB and malaria, we didn't know they'd be successful. They've gone through lots of challenges about making sure the money gets there, making sure the efficiency is right. But as we look at upcoming replenishments for those, and we've got so much distraction politically that the international needs like this could get eclipsed if we're not careful. You know, we see a phenomenal track record. It's been $100 billion overall that the world's put in. Our foundation is a bit more than $10 billion, but we feel there's been over a 20-to-1 return. So if you just look at the economic benefits, that's a pretty strong number compared to anything else.
He said it's a 20-to-1 return on the billions he invested. And he had to crack a grin. Not the lives that's being affected for that profit. Because this is more than just a COVID injection. 20-to-1.
It's a bit more than 10 billion. But we feel there's been over a 20-to-1 return. So if you just look at the economic benefits, that's a pretty strong number compared to anything else.
Not a damn thing funny. All right. So let's go briefly with that being said, the millions, and then we have Gates testifying that he invested billions and he's getting a 20-to-1 return. How does this look? How does this actually look among the public? Well, let's look at another article. Let's look at another article so we can check this out a bit. All right. Another article. So we're looking at March 18th, 2021. Here we have, again, this is from childrenshealthdefense.org, and this is the Defender News. Headline reads, Pfizer's COVID vaccine could become the most lucrative drug in the world. Pfizer vaccine is already the second highest revenue generating drug in the world. Once the pandemic ends, the vaccine makers plan to hike prices. Now this is an interesting one. They plan to hike prices. Let's look at the numbers thus far. Now, Pfizer's COVID vaccine is already the second highest revenue generating drug in the world because they force people. But the company's plans to turn the vaccine into an even bigger cash cow once the pandemic ends, according to news reports. The vaccine maker expects 2021 sales of about $15 billion. based on current contracts for its COVID vaccine. But the number could double, as Pfizer says it can potentially deliver 2 billion doses this year, according to The Guardian. One analysis or analyst speculated that Pfizer could be targeting a price 3 to 4 times higher than the $19.50 the company currently charges the U.S. government, or even up to $156 per dose. Look at those numbers. It's charging the U.S. government $19.50. No, they're charging the taxpayer. I mean, those who looking at economics, you have to understand this was none other than a highway robbery. You're going to pay for the manufacturing of the of this injection, and the taxpayer is going to pay for the manufacturing and then pay for it once it's finished. Once it's been manufactured, usually the capitalist pay for his own production and then sell it back to you. Now the taxpayer is going to pay for the production. And mind you, this is in the context of it being dangerous. From $19.50, it can go as high as $156 per dose. Look at this paragraph here. Down at the bottom, second one from the bottom. Pfizer's initial contract included an option for the government to buy up to 500 million more doses at $19.50 per dose. That's well below $150 to $175 per dose the drug maker typically pulls in for a vaccine, D'Amelio said during the February earnings. Now watch this. I want to show you something about this dosage. Something very interesting. Something very, very interesting. Let's look at another article. Let's look at another article. This is October 19th, 2021. Pfizer Moderna to rake in a combined $93 billion in 2022. Unconscionable. I mean, look at the profits. $93 billion. Vaccine makers Pfizer and Moderna are projected to generate combined sales of $93.2 billion in 2022, nearly twice the amount they were expected to rake in this year, as Airfinity and Health Data Analytics, said Airfinity, a health data analytic group. Now, what I want you to do, you could read, I don't know how big your screen is, but you could look at these numbers here. 2022, Airfinity put total market sales for COVID vaccines in 2022 at $124 billion, according to the Financial Times. Pfizer vaccine sales are predicted to reach $54 billion in 2022. Look at these numbers. But this is very interesting to me. This number is very interesting. You see, they're charging from $15.50 up to $150 that it can rise for a vaccine. It even says it here at the top. At the top here. Numbers are going to be much higher. We're looking at a commitment to sell 2.1 million doses at average price of $15.95. But remember our last article that these prices can go as high as $150 to $175 per dose, right? So from $15 to $19 to $150 to $175 per dose. Okay, now with that being said, check this out. With that being said, look at this. Still in the same article. We're still in the same article, and I want to show you some numbers here. Watch this. Silverman said, right here in the middle of the article, Silverman said pharmaceutical companies are prioritizing their own profits by enforcing their monopolies and selling their vaccines to the highest bidder. Enough is enough. We must start putting people before profits. Okay, so they're arguing over the vaccine. I'm looking at the damn numbers right now. And so when we get here, analysis of production techniques for Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna, which were developed only thanks to $8.3 billion in public funding. So the taxpayer paid for it. They paid for something that potentially can kill them. This is what the legislators have done. This is what the Democrats who sit in seats of power have done. They don't care for life. But we're looking at the numbers. From $15 to $19 to $150 to $175. But yet it says, which were developed only thanks these injections were developed for Pfizer and BioNTech and Moderna only thanks to $8.3 billion of public funding, suggests these same vaccines or injections could be made for as little as $1.20 a dose. So much for trying to help people. Why don't you give it away? $1.20 a dose. So when
and
this
Mr. Grace, thank you so much for being with us. I'd like
when this crook called out his numbers, what did he say? A 20-to-1, even greater return.
Distraction politically. But as we look at upcoming replenishments for those, and we've got so much distraction politically that the international needs like this could get eclipsed if we're not careful. You know, we see a phenomenal track record. It's been $100 billion overall that the world's put in. Our foundation is a bit more than $10 billion, but we feel there's been over a 20-to-1 return. So if you just look at the economic benefits, that's a pretty strong number compared to anything else.
There you go. Pretty strong number compared to anything else. A pretty strong number. So when we're looking at this here, it wasn't a few million. We're not looking at a few million. Many millions.
Women and follow all the HHS criteria. And if you don't, we will.
$, correct? No full authorization type thing. Dr. Thorpe, quickly.
Yes, on informed consent, there was completely the opposite in pregnant women. HHS appears to have captured the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and my research team, including Maggie Thorpe, JD, have proven that with the Freedom of Information Act.
For a few million dollars, correct?
Many million dollars. They captured ACOG. In December of 2020, everybody at ACOG and the other organizations, we're not going to push this vaccine in pregnant women. In the span of a pregnancy, 40 weeks, September 27th, 2021, you will push the vaccine. You will push it in pregnant women and follow all the HHS criteria. And if you don't, we will destroy you and your professional career will take your license away and we will decertify you. That went out to 60,000 OBGYN doctors. So
we probably should have expanded the title of this: corruption of science, federal health agencies, what would you call those? Professional organizations?
These are the three organizations that essentially govern obstetrical care, not just in the United States of America, but the whole world.
By the way, I wanted to ask you, to what extent are the medical journals funded by various conflicting organizations, pharmaceutical companies? I've heard Chinese interests. mean, are you aware of that? You were talking about the article written by the editors of the New England Journal of Medicine.
Yes, I'm aware of the study by Wen and colleagues, David Daniel Wen, that was just published October 10th of 2024, documenting that 1.06 billion with a B dollars went to the reviewers of the medical journals, of probably the most influential medical journals, New England Journal of Medicine, Lancet, BMJ.
That's coming out of the pharmaceutical industry.
That's correct.
So Dr. Walskar.
So now he's proven that he's arguing that the medical journals have been compromised because those who are writing and editing the medical journals are compromised. They're being bought. And who are they really sacrificing? The working class people. And we're going to look at the targets. Okay, this stuff doesn't fit together like this by chance. Last but not least, we must look at the targets. Who was the targets for these injections? But let us finish this, right?
As a vaccine injured, do you believe you received informed consent?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, informed consent, and I, as a physician, I believe strongly in informed consent. Informed consent requires true and transparent data. And we can sit here and hear the mantra or the typical narrative of safe, effective, saved millions of lives, but in reality, that's not true.
Trump saying, bring the receipts. Bring them out. Now we're getting testimonies. And you will have to wonder whether these testimonies will even be coming out like this if the last administration was still in power. See, people are not focusing on the right thing. And then what they are focusing on, whether arguing about Trump at war and all this other business, or whether he is so-called felonies and all this other business. Look, people do not realize, and some don't even care, the threat that was looming. And it was a reality because so many people to this day have been injured and hurt. I said, who was the target? Who was the target of these injections? Well, let the one who was receiving 20-1 return tell us. Him and his wife.
The last thing you want is a bidding war between countries for this vaccine. You know, we know there are 60 million healthcare workers around the world who are keeping everybody safe. They deserve to get this vaccine first. And from there, you want to do tiering in various countries to make sure your most vulnerable populations get it. In our country, that would be Blacks and Native Americans, people with underlying health conditions, and the elderly.
The ones with underlying health conditions. Disproportionately, these are the minorities. See, they're coming to the table like they're trying to help you. That's how they do it. But remember the last time they tried to give us some damn help? You see, sometimes you got to go back in history. You have to go back in history every now and again to remember when the last time they tried to give us some damn help. Remember Margaret Sanger and the eugenists tried to give us some help because they claimed that the large families and the children was causing women to go experience stinging poverty. When we're looking at the elimination of a certain population, not totally, but to keep it under control, to keep it under wraps. They wanted to eliminate the idiot, the imbecile, right? Remember, this who they wanted to eliminate. Now, what's interesting about this, what's very interesting about this, when we're looking at eugenics, who, according to the December 1st, 2020 article, just as we heard Melinda and Bill Gates argue that the most vulnerable and blacks, which will be primarily one and the same, but when you say the most vulnerable, meaning those who have underlying illnesses, you'll find this among the Black and Latino communities, right? Who do we have here? Look at the article. Look at the article. Under the guise of racial justice, lays out, I believe this is Hopkins, because I got something blocking my my screen. John Hopkins lays out plan to vaccinate ethnic minorities and mentally challenged first. Do that sound familiar? We already know that the panel's discussing in Congress today that they knew that the vaccines could kill people. They knew that. And so this is what the argument is about. And then when we rewind back to 2020, who's the first one up? This is in the context of them knowing that it hurts people. Who's the first one up? Who the first one? Under the guise of racial justice. You see, John Hopkins lays out plan to vaccinate ethnic minorities and mentally challenged. Mentally challenged. Isn't that something? So who goes first?
The last thing you want is a bidding war between countries for this vaccine. You know, we know there are 60 million healthcare workers around the world who are keeping everybody safe. They deserve to get.
And I say again, for this channel, we asking people, if you're listening in, if you can bear it, like and subscribe so we can get more information out here, because we need to know, as the working class people, white, black, Latinos, Asians, all of the working class people who's laboring, we need information and we need to understand information, right? So listen carefully. Just don't let it go past you. We were targeted.
The last thing you want is a bidding war between countries for this vaccine. You know, we know there are 60 million healthcare workers around the world who are keeping everybody safe. They deserve to get this vaccine first. And from there, you want to do tiering in various countries to make sure your most vulnerable populations get it. In our country, that would be Blacks and Native Americans, people with underlying health conditions, and the elderly.
That's who should get it. That's who should get it. Under the guise of racial justice, John Hopkins lays out plan to vaccinate ethnic minorities mentally challenged first. That's first on the agenda. First on the agenda. Same article. The main focus of this allocation strategy is to deliver vaccines first to racial minorities, but in such a way as to make those minorities feel, quote, at ease, unquote, and not like guinea pigs, quote, unquote, when receiving an experimental vaccine that those documents admit is likely to cause certain adverse effects more frequently in certain population groups. Research has shown that those subgroups, quote unquote, most at risk for adverse effects are these same minorities. It's these same minorities who's in danger. The documents also acknowledge that information warfare and economic coercion will likely be necessary to combat vaccine hesitancy. We looked at it earlier. Economic coercion, taking your jobs, taking your licenses. This is what we just heard on the panel in Congress. They threaten to take away licenses of physicians, and information warfare. They will cease to allow people to speak out in public on public platforms to combat vaccine hesitancy or to give up a warning, the warning that they wasn't giving us. To combat vaccine hesitancy among these minority groups. It even frames this clearly disproportionate focus on racial minorities as related to national concerns over police brutality, claiming that giving minorities the experimental vaccine first, it's necessary to combat structural racism. That's that liberal stuff. I wanted to say another word, but that's that liberal stuff. That's them liberals acting like they want to help you. And how many uninformed so-called minorities was pushing this out in their churches, in their community centers. How many of them was pushing it? And ensure fairness and justice in the healthcare system and society at large. Oh, we want to be fair. Ain't that about something? They want to be fair. Remember now I was telling y'all, remember the last time it was fair? So we have as we looked at the headline, that headline, mentally challenged. Well, who are they calling the mentally challenged in this article? The imbecile. All right, the imbecile. This was a part of the eugenics program. We don't need them. Some people are born to be a burden on the rest. It just so happens, according to arguments, that Bill Gates himself, father, was definitely pro-eugenist. Pro-eugenist. He probably attended some of these meetings. The Fitter Families for Georgia. He probably was at some of these meetings for the fitter or the fittest family to eliminate certain parts of the population, keep them down low. Why? Because as their sign proclaims, some people are born to be a burden to the rest. You okay? So who received these injections that they know is dangerous first? The mentally, what they say? Mentally challenged and ethnic minorities. Is it argued that the ethnic minorities and the mentally challenged, is it argued that they are called by some to be burdens on the rest? So therefore, this is what we would do to the ethnic minorities and to the mentally challenged, which sometimes they will argue are one and the same. So we can raise fitter families. Let's have let's have justice. Let's have medical justice. Let us go out there and help them. And here you are, germ warfare declared against the Black community. Here we are, the lab coats and needles, pulling up your sleeve. If they ain't trying to kill your babies, they telling you to pull up your sleeve. Birth control is all one and the same. Birth control, death of a nation. And we have those with a grin. Notice the smiles. Now, if you can zoom in on this picture, notice the smile, like they there to help you. This is what we dealing with. Oh, well, how can you say something like that, Judah? That's conspiracy. Is it? Is it conspiracy? Well, the eugenist son, arguably a eugenist himself, he said something. Is this a conspiracy?
In this year's annual letter, Melinda and
Here he is again, the same ones who was arguing that the minorities, Native Americans, and the population who are most vulnerable should get it first. Look at his topic. Overpopulation. This by mistake?
and I take the toughest questions we get asked and give our answers. One that's come up for a long time is, as we make the world healthier, is the population going to get so big that feeding everybody and maintaining the environment is going to be impossible? Here we can see a chart that looks at the total.
That is a damn lie. This is a lie that the rich men been pushing for a long time. And this is stuff most high willing we're going to be bringing out in our classes in the school. This whole running out of resources deal. It's a manipulative lie. It's much like the lie that there's a housing shortage. There's a housing problem. We have to understand what they mean by the problem. You got 14 million empty homes and under 1 million recorded homeless people. What housing shortage? Of course you have more homes empty than people who need them. There is no literal housing shortage. There is no literal running out of resources. The only way that the resources become imbalanced is when you get one man like Gates himself, or like the Rothschilds or the Rockefellers, who own millions of hectares or acres of land, tens of thousands of hectares or acres of land. That is how you begin to compromise the resources. It's the same way a person owns homes. They own more homes than they can live in. You get firms who own 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, 5,000 homes empty for the market. There is no housing shortage. There is no shortage or ever it being a danger of the earth being overpopulated. It's a lie. But it's a lie that they must push to get rid of those who may be a burden. Just as it says in our clip we looked at. What did we look at? Just as it says in the clip we looked at, some people are born to be a burden on the rest. So therefore, this is what he's arguing. This is what Mr. Gates is arguing.
In this year's annual letter, Melinda and I take the toughest questions we get asked and give our answers. One that's come up for a long time is, as we make the world healthier, is the population going to get so big that feeding everybody and maintaining the environment is going to be impossible? Here we can see a chart that looks at the total world population over the last several hundred years. And at first glance, this is a bit scary. We go from less than 1 billion in 1800 and then 3.
We got someone visiting us today. Terra Destroyer. I got to read his comment. He left a couple of comments, but I must agree with him today. The vaccine industry is itself a fraud. I spent my whole career studying vaccines. This is Shiva Chopra. I believe I actually seen some videos with him, actually. It's a fraud. They're targeting a certain population when they did it. Okay? So here we looking at Gates talk about the population. Isn't that something? Who the hell is he? Right? Who the hell is he? These are the criminals that's harbored in profit-driven societies. And they're lauded as heroes, intelligent men. No, they're not.
One that's come up for a long time is, as we make the world healthier, is the population going to get so big that feeding everybody and maintaining the environment is going to be impossible? Here we can see a chart that looks at the total world population over the last several hundred years. And at first glance, this is a bit scary. We go from less.
He said, who in the hell this damn, he said it's a bit scary. Think about the mentality of this damn fool. Who the hell do he think he is? This is a bit scary. Who the hell are you to believe that you can set a standard for life on this planet? And who is growing in population? The same places in where they sent their vaccines. Asia, India, Africa, and to the developed countries among the working class people. That's where they sent it. Just where the eugenists was targeting with their both birth control. Where is it at? In the areas where they believe many of the people are a burden on the rest, but they are not trying to eliminate all of them because you need workers. But they trying to keep a cap on it. The hell they think they are, man. People forgot about this. A lot of people forgot about it because many of them wasn't in the streets campaigning. Some of us were in the streets campaigning in 2020, 2021, 2022. Some of us was advocating and trying to help people losing their jobs because they refused to be used as an experiment. And people forget this. This is not what people talking about. It's just gone, huh? Since the media, mainstream media, not talking about it no more, it's over. The hell? Man, the people got to rise up from being just a dumb population, man.
In 1800, and then 3, a bit scary. We go from less than 1 billion in 1800, and world population over the last several hundred years. And at first glance, this is a bit scary. We go from less than 1 billion in 1800, and then 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7.4 billion where we are today is happening even faster. So Melinda and I wondered whether providing new medicines and keeping children alive, would that create more of a population problem? What we found out is that
who in the hell determined that there is a population problem? I mean, think of the psychology here. Who the hell are these flesh and blood creatures who's supposed to be human, put their pants on one leg at a time normally? Who the hell are they to determine the population of the globe? I mean, think about what the hell he just said.
That creates
the arrogance.
More of a population problem.
Who in the hell said it's a population problem? Whoever said there is a population problem other than the rich people who realize that if more people are being born and get tired of their mess, you're raising up a new generation of those who rebel against the foolishness and the robbery and the crime and the plunder. Who the hell are you to talk about some population problem? This is the devil talking. This is the devil that the Holy Scriptures speak of. An assault against humanity.
What we found out is that as health improves, families choose to have less children. And this effect is very, very dramatic. We find that in every country of the world, this is repeated. The population growth goes down as we improve health. So we've taken that chart that shows the global population growth, and we've actually extended it out all the way to 2100. And we can see that instead of continuing, it actually flattens out. Another way to see that is through this rate of population growth. And you can see that in the 60s, That reached a pretty high number, over 2% per year, and it's now come way, way down.
Yes. If you look into the 60s, you'll see it was a campaign to stop the people they considered a burden from having children. My parents come from large households, 5 and 6 siblings. It was Nixon who argued that the minority population in the 60s and in the 50s were having babies like dog litter. And they had to put a stop to it. These recordings leaked from the Nixon administration in the 60s. And so when we're looking at the drop, that's exactly why they dropped. That is exactly why they dropped. Eugenics, birth control, neuroplants, contraceptives. See, he's classifying all of these pharmaceuticals and drugs and contraceptives as health apparatuses. This improves the health. See, he's including vaccines too that kills and maims and hurt some people. They're twisted, man. And that's why we're saying we cannot just sit by and continue to be victims of these people who sit in power. We must revisit the Declaration of Independence. Listen to what the forefathers of this country argued. Yeah, it dropped in the 60s. And there was a reason why.
Now, 11 billion people still alive a year, and it's now come way, way down. Now, 11 billion people still a lot, but the good news is that the faster we improve health, the faster family size goes down. And so we can feel great about saving those lives.
Yeah, you watch the entire video, you'll find out what he mean about the health. You'll find out what he mean by the health. It includes vaccines, contraceptives, pretty much the eugenics movement under a different face. All right. And let us look at one more thing before we close today.
Fora TV, the world is thinking.
The proportion of GDP that goes to healthcare, is that overallocated?
Well, the U.S. spends 17% of GDP on healthcare, and you drop down to number 2, which is Switzerland at 12%. And so you say, well, hey, what do we get for that? Well, we get nothing. The health outcomes, which are complicated to compare, but the health outcomes are basically slightly worse, both in terms of averages and.
I got to say, I'm playing this on how it's going to close, how we're going to close with this, with some of his last words. And I want you to know, if you don't know, you do your research. We have the links to these videos in the description box. He don't give a damn about the working class health. He don't care about that. Okay, when you getting 20-to-1 turnover over experimental injections, when the pharmaceutical companies know that people are being harmed and killed and maimed, and they still push it, and they make you pay for the potion, $1 and some change to make this vial, and they sell it for $15, and it is to escalate up to at least $175. They don't give a damn about our health. They never did. And that's why when Kennedy walked in there, they did not want him in there. Why did it take for Kennedy to come in and start banning substances that's in the food supply of the working class people that's banned in other countries? Who's allowing this to happen? Congress. Congressmen. And who have dominated the Democratic congressmen, who never cared about no one. They never cared about none. It's all about profits. It's all about keeping power. Notice how this closes. They don't give a damn about no health.
The inequity, our bottom quartile is very ugly compared to all other rich countries' bottom quartile. Our upper quartile is somewhat better, but that's how you get the inequity. So we're spending at a huge rate, which if it wasn't increasing faster than inflation, it's increasing as a percentage of the economy, then okay, you can probably afford it. But as it continues to grow, it squeezes, unless people say, yes, I would like to be taxed a lot more, and most states have these supermajorities that are required to do that, and it's not likely, and it's not clearly a good thing either. But as long as you're dealing with a finite amount, as the medical cost goes up, and that shows up both in state budgets as so-called state Medicaid spending, and it shows up in the federal budget as Medicare, and they're part of Medicaid, it squeezes out everything else. So right now what you see is it's squeezing higher education. You're raising tuitions at the University of California as rapidly as they can, and so the access that used to be available to the middle class or whatever is just rapidly going away. That's a trade-off society is making because of very, very high medical costs and a lack of willingness to say, is spending $1 million on that last 3 months of life for that patient, would it be better not to lay off those 10 teachers and to make that trade-off in medical costs? But that's called the death panel, and you're not supposed to have that discussion. So
the death panel. You're not supposed to have it. If they're too old, let them go. If they become a burden on society, let them go. And that's why I'm trying to explain to you, if people carefully study, and if you're old enough, you'll know who else had become a burden on society. Not just the minority, not just the so-called mentally challenged, but also the baby boomers. Who was targeted for these injections? The baby boomers was targeted as well. They were the ones whose faces was in MSNBC, mainstream media, frightening them to go get these injections. Our mothers, our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers, our aunts and uncles, because they don't give a damn about the health. He is going to talk about people being the problem to help cost, but not question the prices, the astronomical prices of the capitalists who run and who own the pharmaceutical companies. You will not question their price gouging. You will not question their pricing. You're going to question the life of those who struggling to live. Margaret Sanger did not question the corruption inside of the economic system that causes poverty. She blamed it on the unborn children. She blamed the children for causing stinging poverty. These people are twisted. They're demonic and psychotic. And they're the first ones who will run from a death panel. But they're willing to serve it to others any day. Let us not forget what Donald Trump is doing. I don't care about personal stuff right now. I'm talking politics. And right now, he wants answers. And damn it, we want answers too. You done shut every voice down and tried to shut them down for the last 5-6 years.
U.S. President Donald Trump is demanding full transparency from drug companies over the effectiveness of their COVID-19 drugs. Trump called on Pfizer, Moderna, and other pharmaceutical companies to release data immediately, saying the public deserves to see the evidence. He said companies have shown him extraordinary results, but questioned why the same information is not shared with the public. On Truth Social, Trump wrote that it's important to justify success, as some believe vaccines save millions while others doubt. Trump pointed directly to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., saying the CDC and his opponents are tearing themselves apart without clear data. The president urged drug companies to clear up the debate now, saying the CDC is being ripped apart over the issue. Trump also cast doubt on Operation Warp Speed, his own fast-track vaccine program launched in 2020 during the pandemic. He said its reputation must be verified, asking if it was truly as brilliant as many say, or whether mistakes were made.
All right. Time to be transparent and bring out the information that many of us was aware of for several years now. And realize that there is a war against the working class people, and there is something we can do about it. We're going to close out for today's session. We will return again, hopefully, with more discussions. I am Brother Judah, a representative of the NMP, the Nazarene Messianic Party. And again, we would like to welcome all those who have taken their time to visit us, or those who stop in and listen to some of the content. We'd like to welcome you to the NMP Vanguard League YouTube channel. If you want more information, we have our information appearing on the screen. If you would like to visit our webpage, visit the webpage for more information. If you want to understand more of what we teach, as we say, we teach the Bible from a social political perspective, full disclosure, but we're not religious. Usually when people mention the Bible, they think of all of these false preachers. That's not what we do. So if you want to know more about the teachings, if you want to inquire, feel free to inquire. And if you feel that something can be done, we looking to organize and to see who we can work with to fix the situation in which the working class people face, as they're constantly being exploited by the so-called ruling class. And remember, there is definitely, most definitely, something we can do about it. Until the next time, we hope to visit again with more sessions. But now I would like to say we're signing out. Till next time.